Right, thank you very much. In light of time, I'm going to skip the stand-up routine I did at PDRF. Well, okay, awe? Did someone really say awe? Thanks. It is nice to see people in the crowd under 60, so it's great to be here in New York. I will share one piece of advice, though, actually. Having done this kind of work for a while, I will say that there really is nowhere on earth, and if it's true at PDRF, it's true anywhere, there's nowhere on earth that being able to pronounce heteroscedasticity and use it properly in a sentence will help you attract a woman or a man, depending on your gender and your proclivity. For me, I think it's time to stop trying. So we're going to talk about ad latency today, and this is a little different than a lot of the research talks in that in this case, there's actually a call to action. I would like the industry to change the way that we are optimizing digital media in a particular way, and hope you enjoy it. So let me just start off. I'm the kind of guy that likes his dessert before his dinner, so let me hit the high points, and then we'll go through it. The latency of an ad impression is the amount of time that an ad is effective. There we go. That it's effective. How long does it last before that ad impression is no longer of value to either improving your intent, the likelihood of purchase, or any of those other kind of metrics that we like. And we have developed a methodology where for any of these digital campaigns, we can calculate what that latency period is. Second thing is that the decay function, which we kind of all we've all been trained on this. We all sort of assume that it's a half-life, that it looks like a radioactive decay. It turns out that's simply not what the digital decay curve looks like. It actually follows more of a logarithmic curve, and I'll show that a little later on. And then finally, in the realm of the well-duh kind of conclusions, video ads do tend to have much longer latency periods than display. It's not a shock. And then finally, changing the way that ad servers decide whether to fire an ad based on these latency periods can offer digital media planners with what I think would be a powerful new approach to maximizing their digital ad spend. So, what is the optimal frequency for my campaign? It is one of the most common questions I get. It is probably, it's a second least favorite question I get, because the premise, by the way, my least favorite question, because I'm glad you asked, this can be interactive, it's all right. All right. My least favorite question is, how many survey respondents do I need to guarantee a statistically significant lift? Don't think about that question too long. It brews in your brain, and eventually a vein in your brain will explode. I actually believe this is where strokes come from. It's questions like that. So why don't I like what's the optimal frequency for my campaign? Because we all talk about it, right? The reason I don't like that is because campaigns are not generally instantaneous. If we were talking about a campaign that was very short, sure. But it doesn't take into account the fact that campaigns are long. And I'll talk more about that later. Frequency caps, nearly ubiquitous. They're based on this common sense belief that if I show you 100 ads, that 100th ad isn't going to be as effective as the first, and that the 90th isn't going to be as effective as the 20th, and so on. That we all believe that there's this declining marginal utility associated with advertising effect. They're also, so they're used, so frequency caps have something to do with when does the value of this ad decline, my ROI drops, and I want to switch. Obviously, they're also used to manage reach, but again, as I said, they don't consider the time between ad exposures. So I think we can all agree in the room that if I show you 10 ads today, the 10th is less impactful than the first. Anybody want to sort of challenge that assertion? That's nice. However, what if I showed you 9 ads today in a 90-day campaign, and I showed you the 10th ad on the 90th day? Do you really believe that that 10th ad, a day after you take it, rather a day after you've seen it, is less effective than the 9th ad that you saw 90 days ago. And common sense would suggest no, right? So what this research looks at is that latency period. Can you think about how, what I call periodicity, the amount of time in between ads, can you think about that as a way to structure how you understand this? And you know, the rest of this is sort of blah, blah, blah. It's good stuff, though. Read it sometime. All right, so real quick, just so you know how we did the research, we have a brand survey lift product as others in the room do. Ours is a little different in that we take a regression-based approach to measuring the effectiveness of ads. And the way it works is, not every time, but mostly we don't use control sample. And there's a bunch of reasons why we don't use control sample. One is it's very challenging in the digital environment in particular to get a properly representative control group. The gold standard for this would be to have the ads fire in exactly the same property and then have it randomly select some number of people to show them, you know, let's say, go get your flu shot, and trigger the ads based on that. The problem is that, number one, it's very expensive to do that. Nobody likes spending the money for these bonus impressions. Publishers used to give it out. That does not happen anymore. And what we found when we did some research on this is that something like 40% of the control impressions that got fired were in less desirable real estate than the ads. Sometimes it's intentional, where the advertiser simply doesn't want to spend the same CPM for their control impressions. Nothing terribly surprising about that. Sometimes it's you know, less above the table kind of activity, but the bottom line is it's hard to get these groups to be properly representative. So what's different in digital is that we have the capability to know exactly how many times you were served passively. We don't need to make guesses. We know the answer. And so we can use this distribution of ad exposure to get at the effectiveness of an ad campaign. And so in this, what you're seeing up here, we don't see zero, but we do know what the average, what was on here, awareness, what the average awareness is for people exposed once. We know what the average exposure is for people exposed twice, 5 times, 12, 15. And we can construct a curve using a nonlinear regression methodology that tells us what the expected awareness would be at any level. You set that to 0. That gives you your expected, what you would imagine your control group would look like, right? And then the difference between that and the total delivery of your campaign is your lift. So the other advantage to this is that in a regression environment, you are able to control for the effect of some other things, right? So one of the things that you worry about when you're doing test and control is you want to make sure that these populations look correct, and sometimes you get too many women, sometimes you get too many people lower income, sometimes you get too many older people, and then you can apply sampling weights to fix that. In regression, you can include those elements as predictive variables, and that pulls out the effect. So what you end up with is this is the effect of a marginal ad impression holding constant: age, income, gender, prior brand use, whatever's relevant. The other nice thing that you can do with this, I talked about that. The other nice thing you can do with this, I think it's in the later slide. Let me hop forward. Yeah, the other nice thing you can do with this is you can also identify properties of an ad, right? So I could discriminate that one ad was creative A versus creative B, publisher 1 versus publisher 2. Just here, much of the research on decay rates assumes half-life. We are concerned with recency because when we look at, particularly with surveys, is because we want to take into account that an ad seen today has more impact on my survey response than an ad seen, you know, a week ago or a month ago, or I gotta watch my hands. So in this example, you have someone served 5 exposures. but they were spaced evenly over a span of 4 weeks. The effective value based on a half-life of roughly a week would be, these have about a would be the same as seeing 2.1 ads today. Same 5 exposures, but closer up to the moment of the survey, you can see that this would have an effective value of 2.7 exposures. So these things matter, and we have to include them in the analyses. So the first thing we did, or the first thing I did, is I grabbed one of my statisticians. I said, here's the data. I just want you to run it and show that half-life is how this actually works, because, you know, that must be how it works. And he came back about 2 days later, and he's like, I think I'm doing it wrong because it's not showing up as a half-life. And so we went through it, and we did a series of different candidate models. We used the Akeiki information criterion as a way to determine which were the best fit. And far and away, the logarithm had the best fit. It was 1.3 times more likely than a linear decay, and it was more than 2.5 times more likely to be the correct functional form than the exponential or logistic. For those of you who are interested, Akeiki is a Japanese mathematician, and Akeiki means in Japanese red pond. So you can use that for your next trivia. As I mentioned before, unsurprisingly, video ads tended to have much longer latency periods than display ads. I don't know that I need to go into any detail there. So what can we do with this is the question. Let's assume for the sake of argument that we have an ad with a 13-day latency period. And rather than having the ad server say, if I've served 5 ads, don't serve the 6th, right? Frequency cap. What if instead we had the ad server say, if I haven't seen the ad in 5 days, show me the ad. If I've seen the ad within 5 days, don't show me the ad. It's also controlling for reach, right? You're making sure that the same people don't get, you know, the same people who are most likely to see the ad don't see it all the time. And so what you see is that if you were to run it like this, and someone actually saw the ad every 5 days, what you would see is a build in the effectiveness of the ad campaign, which you could maintain over time. You could also make intelligent decisions as to when to turn things on or off, lengthen or shorten these periods to create value based on the thing that you're advertising. We've been calling this a sawtooth. So what do you do with it? What are the implications? Let's take an impulse item. Snickers bars, these always come up in my presentations. I'm very fond of Snickers bars. Mars and Snickers, not associated with the research, just a damn fine candy bar. But let's say it's something like that. You don't know when someone's going to buy it, and they have an opportunity to buy it virtually all the time. It's really hard in the US to be someplace where you cannot find a Snickers bar. So in this case, you might think that the ideal way to serve your ads would be to have a little bit of the ad affecting you all the time. So you might consider setting the period in which the periodicity of the campaign to something just less than the ad latency, and make sure that, you know, as you're hoping, that when these guys get the ad, my advertising is impacting them in some manner. When they're in a position to make a decision to make the purchase. Let's say it's a brand that's purchased at a predictable time. So beer. Virtually all beer is sold on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. That's when people buy beer. So if you know that's the case, and you know that your ad has a 3-day latency period, which would not be unusual for a for a display ad, for example, you wouldn't want to have that ad firing on a Monday, right? Because by Thursday, there's no impact. So you could use what you learn about ad latency to say, okay, this is the time frame in which I want these ads firing. This is how much time I need to build up my audience. And it gives you an opportunity to not throw away ad impressions. Similarly, brand promoting some kind of a special event, movie opening, special promotion at a restaurant. Knowing the ad latency will allow you to be able to say, here's how I want to build the campaign, and here's where I can reasonably turn it off and still have all of the effectiveness that I want. And then just finally, for general campaign optimization, it's kind of a dirty word, and it's one of the things that really frustrates me about my industry, is that the people who do the digital optimization and the people who do the creatives don't talk. They work in different organizations, and the people who hire folks like me and others in the room have absolutely no ability to affect creative in many cases. But we could tell you whether your creative has an ad latency that's long or short. You could optimize on that. You could learn from that. And I would encourage people to do that. So just ran out of time, but thank you for your attention. And unfortunately for all of you, you will be seeing me again shortly.